In this lesson, we are going to see what happens when we are faced with a couple of significant revisions. Now, we're going to assume in our case that we are dealing with a plan that is at a stage where we can now show it to the client or the person that is within our team that has a say about things. So we basically go and mock up this CAD plan and then we go and discuss it. And then after that discussion, we find out that there are a couple of relatively big changes that need to be made. The first one that is on the larger side is going to be that now we come back and the client says to us, or the person in our team says that we want the building to really be sitting on the edge of the cliff. And what we've done is we've conservatively gone and pushed it back so that the edge of the cliff is sitting here. But basically, to get the real view, to get the real extremity of this type of building sitting and being nestled on this edge, we want to get much closer. So what has happened is that we are now faced with a situation where we need to move a significant portion, or at least the entire building, along the site. Now, for cases or like this, we wouldn't be able to necessarily be able to build anything over the site boundary line. So we're going to say that our client has gone and bought the right to use an extra 3 meters of site down the slope. So we're going to now make this new line. We're going to move it downwards by 3 meters. And what we can now do is we can start moving the entire building. Now, before I make any move like that, one of the good things to do is to decide what portions you are moving and what portions cannot move. So in our case, what cannot move are going to be the contours themselves as well as the site boundary. So in order to lock down your selection, what you want to do is use the layer lock tool and then just click on the layers that you want to lock down. What you are now left with is a scenario where you can move everything else on your plans except for those things that geographically cannot be moved. So what you want to do now is just type enter and go and select everything, including your underlay, including and especially your base points, and go and move all of that to be much closer to the edge. So I'm going to look at what the sketch is referring to as being the edge, which is roughly here, and I'm going to now move all of that much closer. So I'm going to just undo F8. I'm going to hit F3 so I'm not snapping onto anything. And I'm just going to try and get as close as possible to this actual edge. So I'm going to just try and fine tune it by looking at where that edge is. And I'm going to say that we're more or less going to be around in this position. Then I'm going to have a look again at my contours, which are frozen, and I'm going to see where they end up exactly. And I'm going to see whether that is sufficient for what we want to do. And you can also have a look at the distance that the pool is being pushed over the edge, and we can see that it's about 7 meters in that dimension. So at some point there will be a support for the pool, and the rest we just want to have basically floating and being cantilevered out into the drop-off that we have here towards the ocean. That's really going to be the extreme attraction to this house, is having this radicalized ending where we have this viewing balcony, where we have this long pool really going out into the nothingness of this beautiful view that we get in this direction. So what we want to do after that move is complete is you can go and unfreeze or unlock your layers that you had locked earlier, and you can also now go and move your site boundary to be according to that 3 meters. I'm just going to remove this object since I'd accidentally moved it with the rest of the house. So it should have stayed in the same place. And now we see that we need a little bit more than 3 meters, so we're going to move it another 2. So thereby assuming that the client would buy the right to 5 meters. And I'm now going to move my site boundary into the new position. So this is something that would hardly ever change. The site boundary would really be changed in a sort of way, but I just want to show you how something like this could be dealt with on a larger scale. The main lesson here is that you lock down the things that you don't want to change, or you simply hide them if you know more or less where they are, and then you move the rest of the object freely. The main thing is just not to move things that cannot be moved, because once you do that, then you're in fact changing certain properties that are actually unchangeable. So if you have a look now, our sketch starts to line up with this existing road, and things start making a lot more sense. And perhaps this would have been the best place to put the building right in the beginning. So one of the other things that we're going to look at changing is the way that this building handles its entrance. I'm just going to turn off the image underlay as well. And if I have a look at how this is all arranged, I can see that I have a quite formal entrance lounge where originally I was planning on putting a couple of very fancy seats, a little bit of a table with a couple of decorations, and really having quite a formal sort of entry hall, entry lounge type of an effect. But when I had a look at the spacing of how the living room was placed, it hadn't had a direct relationship with the pool deck and the pool. So what I'd like to do now as a revision is I'd like to open up this entry lounge, and I'd actually like to call this the sort of party lounge that you would come into. Not that it would be a mess or anything, but basically what it would mean is that if you're having an event or if your kids are running around on a summer's day, they want to use a lounge space that they can pretty much relax in and use in conjunction with the dining, the kitchen, and the pool deck. So all these three areas will basically all start functioning as one. The living room that is on this side has now been renamed to formal living room, and this is going to be a place where you have really fancy furniture, where you have people that are well dressed. You don't really want to have wet kids jumping from the pool deck or coming in from a food party, coming and messing up this space. So this is going to be something that has its own viewing balcony that is deliberately attached to it, and that is going to have a direct relationship. So those stairs are going to basically separate this area, and that is going to be a formal, relaxing area that just focuses on the view, whereas this is going to be your food, your entertainment, your deck, your sun, your pool, all of that happening in this area here. So to make that change, the first thing that I want to do is I want to remove this column, and I want to really free up this facade and give it much more openness. So I'm going to delete that square column, and I'm going to copy this column to the grid line that we have here. And while I'm doing that, I also want to copy it all the way to this point, and I want to then line up the bottom of that column with this line here. So what that allows me to do is it allows me to keep that structural grid in place, and at least I have a more rectilinear and simplified structure. So now I simply go and delete all of this, since I will be redoing it from scratch, and I can also delete this part, or at least rather move it and rotate it. So this line I don't need either, or in fact I do, but this line can now be gray as well. And I don't really need that line to go beyond here, otherwise we'll be drawing a double line. And here I'm going to now create a similar type of opening, but happening in this dimension. So we're going to stack the doors against this wall, and we're going to be able to open up all of this. So in actual fact, when it's all open, you won't have a single piece of glazing between this entire space. And that's really going to be the magic of this type of open area. So what we want to do for that, a nice quick way to mirror things instead of copying and rotating, is to draw a 45-degree line. So just create a temporary line, rotate it minus 45 degrees, and then go and mirror at least 3 of these door leaves. So then we want to choose a mirror line. We choose 1 point, 2 points, enter. This I'm actually going to delete completely. I don't think I need it. And now we have those 3 lines. So what you want to do now is you want to respace this. So we're going to say, yes, we do want to have those 3 leaves. What we're going to do is we're going to basically take this dimension, and we're going to draw a line all the way to here. We're going to div enter, so divide that line. Number of segments is going to be 3, enter. I'm going to delete this temporary line, and I'm going to just use these points as the new dividing lines, and I'm going to now stretch the frame holding onto the center line of that frame, and now I'm going to delete those original lines. So this one is going to go right against the wall, and I'm not going to use this arrow marker since that is not going to be a moving line anymore. And now I'm going to basically just add a extra piece of joinery here. One of them will actually have to move together with the window frame, so that will have to be a slightly larger piece that basically has a two-way lock, and all of this will now be able to slide across to the side. So what I want to do now is I want to add a larger frame. So this is something that I can copy from here. I should have actually kept the original frame, so instead of copying and rotating that, let's just go and recreate a new frame. So that will be something that will have a dimension of this. So let's ignore that diagonal line. Let's move this across and stretch this down. I'm going to make it slightly wider by 20 mils, and I'm going to stretch this towards that. Delete that tiny little line that was left over. I think this I don't need to have that wide, so let's just go and stretch that back by 20 mils. So you can see I'm pretty freely working and editing, and this is almost a refinement process that I'm going through live with you on screen. And basically you're just getting an idea of what I've been doing all along. Every single time that I go and add all of this fenestration, or when I go and do the type of sliding doors that I had done here, it's basically the same process. You just copy what you have originally so that you can keep as many of the items the same, and then you go and edit it as you go along. One of the other things that is nice to have on sliding doors is an annotation to show you what is actually fixed. Now you would use a much smaller text size, so let's copy this one from here, and onto that you would just want to type FIXED for fixed. You can use capitals or a combination, and that will basically indicate that this one doesn't move, and these two are all going to slide in one direction next to that piece of glazing. So we had now in this lesson gone and done two big changes, and this pretty much shows you how easy it can be and how quickly those changes can be handled.